Hi, I'm Stewart Spinks and welcome to episode 367 of my podcast, Beekeeping Short and Sweet. It's been a bit of a somber mood in the office today, as it's been a rather sad end to the week. I've carried out the colony destruction on the hive with a heavy infection of CBPV, and in today's podcast I'll explain the process and what happens next. Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. This week's podcast is brought to you, in part, by Hive 5 Multi-Guard. So,
when you need a little peace of mind that your bees are safe from dangers of all kind, pesticides, hornets, wasps and mice are no match for Hive 5. The Hive 5 Multi-Guard is the best one in town. Keeps your bees safe all year round. The ultimate solution has been found. It's Hive 5.
The Hive 5 Multi-Guard fits nearly all beehives and makes beekeeping much easier. Hive 5.
Hi everyone, it's podcast time again, and it really does feel like autumn has finally taken control of the weather. Colder, cloudier and damper. Not ideal conditions for our honeybees, but I have been expecting a change in the weather for some time now. I would imagine this change will be set now for the rest of the autumn and the gradual drift into the winter months. I'm not really a fan of these conditions. I find them possibly the worst type of weather for our colonies. A cold that seems to seep through the hive, damp and mould in the furthest corners away from the bees, and an unwillingness on the part of the bees to move around much. Now, this really only applies to the smaller colonies. The largest ones we have will just not be bothered at all by these conditions right now. They have far too many adult bees milling around, creating warmth within the hive, evaporating excess moisture and keeping busy foraging the last remaining ivy. Interestingly, I've seen a regular number of bees on the flowers in my front garden at home here in Norwich. Here I have some dahlias, cosmos and roses all still in flower and all being regularly visited by our honeybees. I know they're my honeybees because the nuke box on the roof of the garage is very busy right now despite the change in the weather, and they fly out of the nuke box, turn sharp left and along the side of my house before turning sharp right and into the front garden. Don't go thinking I have some kind of Grand Designs house and garden from front to back. It probably only measures 20 metres, maybe 25 metres, so it's not exactly huge. It has been fun to have the bees on the garage roof. I could spend quite some time just standing beneath the nuke, watching them fly out and then return with pollen baskets fully loaded. They can't stay there for much longer though. They've grown so well, but that increasing population does bring with it a new challenge, and that's bee poop on the neighbour's washing and my wife's car. I really do want to keep everyone happy. I'm fine with washing the car, I just don't want an angry neighbour asking me to redo their weekly laundry wash. We're not far off the colder weather starting to affect that nuke on top of the garage too. I'd rather see it on a couple of pallets nearer the ground or on a hive stand in one of the sheltered apiaries. No doubt by the end of the month I'll have moved them, and I have every confidence that they will be more than ready to see out the winter and grow strongly in the spring next year. As we drift our way into the autumn and winter months, it becomes more tricky to find topics to chat with you all about, to try and keep you interested. I was wondering if you'd be interested in a series about honeybee diseases maybe. If that's a topic you'd like to hear about, please do get in touch, let me know, and I'll put some notes together so that I can share that with you. It's obviously a subject that is keenly in focus right now for me with our destruction of the CBPV colony. So you'll be getting this podcast on Sunday. I'm writing it and recording it on Friday, and I'll probably edit it on Saturday morning while I'm looking after Marley, Steph's cockapoo. So this morning, today, that's Friday, we carried out the destruction of the CBPV colony. As a reminder, that's chronic bee paralysis virus. It's available as a video on my Patreon page. If you're listening to this on one of the free-to-air podcast platforms, sometime from mid-November onwards, I guess, could I urge you to maybe consider signing up to my podcast via the Patreon page? You'll get all of the information right at the time that you need it most, each and every week throughout the season. And of course, it makes a great Christmas present. If you're already a subscriber, to you I say thank you. We couldn't do all that we do without your support, and it means so much to me personally. I spoke last week about the CBPV infection and how it affected our colony and the individual honeybees. Today, early this morning, before the sky had a chance to lighten, I drove over to collect Steph and Marley before heading to the Fishing Lakes apiary to carry out the destruction. It was a quiet drive. I think Steph knows when I'm not particularly happy about something, and this was a task that I never really look forward to. That said, it is an important task and one that I won't ever shy away from or apologise for. I believe it is good animal husbandry to take care of all of our colonies as best we can, and if it means having to lose one humanely in order to prevent a nasty disease from sweeping through the rest of our colonies, then I will do what is required. It just doesn't mean that I have to enjoy the task. So the colony was originally from the farm apiary. If you've seen the videos, you may be a bit confused. We had intended to carry out the destruction on Thursday morning. Everything was going according to plan, up to the point of picking up the bottle of ethyl acetate, which turned out to be isopropyl alcohol. I'd picked up the wrong bottle. I guess I should have been glad I bothered to read the label before dosing the hive, but it was a frustrating and wasted journey. So we decided to use the trip to our advantage and take the colony back to Norwich with us to save on the journey time the following morning. It made sense as I had already blocked up the entrance, so all we had to do was to lift the hive onto the back of the truck and strap it down. The reason for doing this was actually one of convenience and practicality rather than any specific beehive focused reason. I don't know about the rest of the UK, but we seem to have a really high number of roadworks in and around Norwich, particularly now, but over the past few years. This means several detours and delays in traffic queues, so taking the hive back to the fishing lakes meant a much shorter, faster journey this morning. We arrived at the fishing lakes just as the morning light was bringing everything into focus and not the dim, dark shapes that you can only see when it's dark. The hive was quiet and there were no bees flying at the entrance. There were one or two bees moving around just inside the entrance, but I quickly plugged up that gap so that none could fly out. The process I use is straightforward and practical. It takes little time and keeps everything sealed to prevent further robbing or bees escaping. We have some very large plastic bags, bigger than the type you might use to put into a wheelie bin, although not big enough, unfortunately, to take a honeypore polyhive sitting in the bottom of the bag. It will accept a hive if the bag is used from the back to the front of the hive, the bottom of the bag at the rear and the open top of the bag at the front. We ended up with the bag on the stand and inside the hive complete, made up with a floor, brood box, coverboard and roof. Beneath the hive, but inside the bag, I slid a large folded cardboard box. I used this to catch any liquid that might drip through beneath. I removed the roof and took that out of the bag, leaving just the coverboard on the top. This is a clear Perspex coverboard, so you can see how many bees there are inside, and that allows you to judge how much ethyl acetate to use. For a full-size colony, I would use around 300 to 400 mils of liquid. It is quite a lot, but it ensures that they are killed very quickly and humanely. I puffed some smoke under the coverboard. Before that, I put on my bee suit and gloves. Although it's rare for the bees to come out, flood out and sting at this time of the day, there's no point in taking risks. And of course the gloves are an important part of the PPE that you should use. I didn't wear any safety goggles as the hive was inside a plastic bag and there was no chance of any of the liquid splashing up into my face. Having already removed the screw cap on the bottle containing the amount of ethyl acetate that I wanted to use, I simply lifted the coverboard and poured the liquid over the top bars and between the frames, quickly but carefully. Once complete, just a matter of a few seconds really, I replaced the coverboard and gathered up the plastic bag, squeezing out as much air as possible before twisting the top and tying a simple knot into it to prevent any gases or vapours from escaping. Honestly, there is a loud, rather terrible fanning of wings as the ethyl acetate evaporates and becomes a gas that suffocates the bees, but suffocates them very quickly. The fanning noise very suddenly stops, and with that, the deed is done. I put the roof back on to prevent the bag from being blown around, and then strapped the roof down with its hive strap. And that's pretty much the destruction of a colony. I feel that, although unpleasant a task as it is, I've done all I can to make it as quick as possible, and in doing this I've protected the remaining honeybee colonies in my care. The hive will stay in place for 24 hours before I return and remove it to the bonfire for destruction. That's just everything inside the hive, not the hive itself. A hot, fast-burning bonfire is needed, one that will melt the wax quickly and burn fiercely, destroying any of the virus that may be lurking on the frames, wax or dead bees. It is possible to keep the frames and boil them, removing the wax by steam cleaning maybe, but I prefer to start over completely, a kind of belt and braces method. So it was a sad but necessary task, and not without its negative financial implications. I am, after all, a bee farmer. A strong hive may well produce upwards of 100 kilos of honey in a season, or if used to produce a nucleus colony for sale, maybe two, I've lost out on a sale or two. The potential loss, though, if I hadn't carried out the destruction, could be much worse, so I'd rather follow the course of action that I have taken. But I think now it's time to move on. If you have any questions about it, please do get in touch. But in other news, and much more positively, I've agreed with Rebecca at Thorn Beehives to produce a series of videos featuring their bees on a budget hives. The idea is to set up just 2 beehives as if I were only just starting out, and I have 2 of their starter kits. I'll link the exact ones in the podcast notes. These hives are their English cedar standard national hives with SN4 frames. I've specifically asked for them to be in the flat, which means not made up, so I will have to embarrass myself once again with some woodworking on camera. My plan is to spend the winter months making everything up, preparing the hives to accept some bees in the spring, and then giving them a corner of an apiary, probably at the fishing lakes, where I can take them through their first and second season and maybe beyond. I want to use them as a hobbyist beekeeper who only really wants 1 or 2 hives at the bottom of the garden, and not have it grow and grow into multiple hives that get out of control. Let's face it, I already have that in other apiaries. I'm going to choose unwired foundation for the super frames, because I'm not even going to use an extractor should I get any kind of honey crop. My plan is to crush and drain the honey rather than spend out on additional equipment. I want to make it as simple as possible. It may also be that we use the hives as a double brood or a brood and a half setup. I've had a request to show how I would manage that kind of beehive setup, especially when it comes to inspections and things like treating the bees for varroa mites. Actually, I'm quite excited to be starting beekeeping again. It will be great fun to have the challenge of these smaller hives again, especially when combined with our larger brood nest area honeybees that maybe are of a buckfast style. This means nice calm bees, but prolific, with sometimes very large brood nests. This can sometimes mean the queen runs out of space laying eggs in the spring, and ultimately the colony swarms. We'll see. As usual, I'll show everything, warts and swarms and all, and if I lose control of them and they swarm, well, that's just how it goes. But I'll try my very best to head them off before that happens. If you're thinking of getting started in beekeeping, maybe you have bees, but you're struggling with the whole spring swarming challenges, or maybe you'd just like a refresher on how to manage your bees in the spring, then this could be just the playlist of videos you're looking for. It will be available both on Patreon and then a few weeks later on YouTube. And I would suggest if you want to follow my year with them as you take ownership of your own bees, then signing up to Patreon will get you perfectly in step with the timing of my season. YouTube will certainly get you the right information, just a few weeks too late perhaps. Well, that's it for this week. For all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now. And if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,600 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible, no waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2025 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey. Head over to Google and search for Patreon and the Norfolk Honey Company.